Welcome to the Landlord Diaries, where we talk about midterm rentals and the opportunities behind them. We'll share landlord stories, talk about maximizing investment potential, and discuss how to live the very best landlord life. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Furnished Finder, the leader and largest online marketplace for midterm rentals. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.
Hello. Welcome back to the Landlord Diaries podcast. If you are just joining us, we are all about midterm rentals, those 30-plus day furnished rentals for business travelers, relocating families, anyone that needs monthly rentals for, those gap periods. I'm your host, Kelly Bailey, and Katie Lyon of the Landlord Diaries podcast. We also work for the Furnished Finder marketing team, so thanks for tuning in today. Katie, what do we learn from Daryl in regards to his multifamily midterm rentals?
Yeah, Daryl's got a solid portfolio of long-term rentals that he's slowly transitioning over to midterm. So it's really interesting to see how he's kind of increasing his portfolio value without adding extra units by transitioning these into midterms. And throughout that, he's come up with all of these processes and ways to solve problems and avoid them from happening again. And it's really cool to hear him explain kind of his reasoning and how he's transitioning long-term to midterm, and then how he's using these processes and procedures and operations really to just make these things run really, really smoothly.
Well, enjoy the episode. Daryl Eisen works full-time and owns 19 doors in Ohio, Kansas, and Florida, 7 duplexes, 1 triplex, and 1 to 2 single-family rentals. Daryl has converted 4 of these doors from long-term rentals to midterm rentals and plans to continue the trend as units come available. 85 to 90% of Daryl's midterm rental bookings come from Furnished Finder. Daryl, thanks for sharing your story with us today. How are you?
Great. How are you two ladies?
Doing well. Excited to dive into all things midterm rentals with you. So let's start off with your story. You work full time and you've built quite the real estate portfolio for yourself. So what do you do for work, and what are your overall investing goals?
Yeah, so I've been in technology sales for a while. First as a kind of sales engineer, and then as a sales full seller. Been doing that since 2008. Before that, I was in IT, managing IT departments, and got burned out on management and thought, hey, where can I make just as much money, or if not more? And I've learned it's a lot more. But then I got into the habit of living off my base pay and using all my commissions to buy real estate.
Smart.
So been doing that for a while. Can't say it's worked out that way every year, but sometimes I want to take a big vacation. But yeah. So then I started investing in real estate. Really, I mean, all the way back in 2002 when I bought my first condo I lived in. Bought a house in 2005. Rented out the condo until 2015. Here in San Diego, ran into some tenant law issues renting that condo out, and decided I would sell it. And then in 2017, I started purchasing in the Midwest. I grew up near Canton, Ohio, so I started investing there. Bought a duplex, and then bought 5 duplexes together, a triplex, and bought another duplex in Kansas, and then built a single family house in Florida during the pandemic. And yeah, so I actually haven't added any new real estate to the portfolio in a few years, but I've instead been focusing my investments on improvements in what I have, and increasing my overall profit in what I have. And the midterm rental strategy is a huge part of that, increasing the profits in what I have. I realized at one point, I mean, I listened to Bigger Pockets, I think every episode until maybe 600, and then I just kind of listened to the ones that now, like, I think I'd be interested in, but I was die hard on, like, I need 100 doors, I need 100 doors. That'll get me to my number. And then I thought, you know what? I need to establish my number. Forget about the doors. And how do I get to the number with the least amount of effort and the least amount of work possible? I went to the BP Summit. I've been looking at midterm rentals. I think this podcast was really fresh and young a few years ago when I found it. I listened to a couple episodes of it, went to I live in San Diego, so it was easy for me to go to the BP conference that year. And Sarah Weaver and they were there talking, and I watched their session and ran into a couple people, and then got started in it. Started with my triplex. That triplex was a challenge for me. It's in a kind of inner city area in a good section of the inner city area, but things around it maybe aren't as good. And as a lot of these cities go, you've got a good street and a bad street. And I was just struggling to keep good tenants in it for long term. And I was like, I'm going to sell it or do something else. So I decided to furnish 2 of the units, and they've been full ever since. So then I did the 3rd unit, and now I'm starting to do this set of 5 duplexes I have in Akron, Ohio. I've converted one of those just a couple months ago. Actually, I started it and I turned it over in June. It was already rented out by the time I had it done, and it is now rented with a 2-week gap here at the end of this month until June of next year.
That's incredible. I love the fact that you were able to maximize your portfolio and really increase your investment without purchasing new properties. I think that's so important, especially for people who have long-term rentals, right? Maybe you don't want to purchase more right now, but you have the option to pivot into midterms.
Sure. I mean, more doors means more expense too, right?
Right.
So, it's more roofs that need to be repaired. It's more hot water heaters to go bad. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when I started looking at the reality of not just having these pipe dream goals, but running an actual business, that's when I made the shift.
Yes, definitely. Before we move over into the nitty gritty of your portfolio and how you operate your midterm rentals and all the fun stuff, Katie, I made a note to come back to, those investing goals. What are your investing goals, Katie, with your arbitrage and the properties that you've bought?
Yeah, good question. Some of our goal is to set up, future funds for the kids and to have some long-term wealth that they can use to go to college or to purchase their home. We live in Denver, so it's always the fear of, we want you to stay here if you can, but purchasing a home might be hard if we don't give you a leg up. So that's a big part of it. The other part is some flexibility and freedom. My husband now works full-time for our rental business, and that has been a game changer just in our day-to-day lives.
What? This is new news. When did this happen?
Yeah, this happened in July. So he is full-time working for the properties, and it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So that was a big goal. It was just having that kind of family flexibility, because we realized both with full-time jobs that it was really, really difficult just to manage, especially his job was really demanding and very, very time intensive. So that's been a huge goal. And I think other than that, it's just to be able to take the trips we want to take, right? And we want to go do the things we want to do. And my financial goals have always been, I don't need to be the wealthiest person in the world, but I want to be able to take vacations. I want to be able to live in the house I want to live in. I want to be able to, go have experiences in life and really kind of not have money stop that. So that's been our big thing. Arbitrage has been great for us because it allows us to keep the ball rolling when we might not be ready to purchase the next property, whether it's because of a down payment or just because of not finding the right property or whatever it is. So yeah, that's been kind of our strategy.
I am so glad I asked that question today, because that is new facts for me and all of our listeners. So congratulations to your family. And if you are listening to the podcast, we want to know you. We don't want you just to listen and tune in and gain a lot of insights. We want you to comment and get engaged so that we can, stay in touch and help encourage you in your midterm rental business. So if you have investing goals you want to share, don't forget to add them to the comments on YouTube and in audio platforms in the show notes. All right, so let's dive into Daryl's midterm rental portfolio. We've already established, 19 doors, a lot of multi-families, mainly in there. Been investing since 2002. But one of the things you already noted that I want to dive deeper into is the difference in the tenant type between long-term rental and midterm rentals, because that was a big mind shift for you of why you wanted to move from long-term to midterm.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I knew getting into the midterm rental game that like I wasn't gonna have to deal with evictions, right? I had it's interesting too because a couple of my like the duplexes, that first duplex I bought in Canton, Ohio, it's in North Canton, and it's like this beautiful property. They're like 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I've never had a problem there with a tenant, right? Because like it's also like 2 times the rent of a lot of the other stuff I have in that area. So it seems like the more people pay, the less problems you have is kind of this little formula that I came up with, right? And my Akron properties have been much better than the other ones that I had problems with. So like it kind of, the problems do tier with kind of the more people pay. I mean, however you want to look at that geopolitically, whatever, but it's just what my experimentation has taught me, right? And I mean, I was having it was costing me $2,000 to $3,000 every time somebody left to redo. I mean, I had these beautiful hardwood floors that have to be redone because people would scratch them up, and painting, and broken cabinets and whatever else happened. With going midterm, I was able to put about a $10,000 investment into each one, into getting it remodeled, getting it cleaned up, new countertops, new cabinets, some stuff. Luckily, my property manager there was able to do most of that work for me. And over a couple of months, he just takes it out of my cash flow and all my other properties. So it's like, it was kind of like, I just didn't get a cash flow check for a couple of months from them. And then, about 10, my target was 10,000 per unit on furnishing, but I ended up more around 15, when it really came down to it. I really do them nice. My thought was, looking at my competition, I wanted to look better than the best one that I found in the area. And that's what I did. I have a friend there that I'm helping, and he sent me his listing, and I'm like, ooh, he's like, I'm not getting bookings. I looked at this, I'm like, why don't you do this and do that and put some art on the wall,
what is those things? What did you tell him to do?
So his place looked really dated, right? And I don't know, it might just be me, but my taste, if I see carpet, I think other people's dirt and filth, right? Like it's and as well as like, his cabinets were very dated, and I was like, you don't need to replace them, just paint them white, right. And his furnishings
art
were
on
fine.
The wall, you said?
No art on the wall. He had nothing on the walls, and I'm like, look, a lot of this thing. First of all, I don't want anyone hanging anything on the walls. I have it in my rules. You're not allowed to hang anything on the walls, right? And so I put art on the wall. Pretty much everywhere you would typically hang something. If you were living in a house, there's something hanging there, and I go with a standard theme, right? So a lot of mine are beach themed. Actually, 2 of them are beach themed. I guess 2 of them are beach themed and 2 of them are mountain themed. So I kind of do the same. It was like, there aren't mountains in Ohio, and there aren't any beaches, right? So let's do something that's not there, so people feel like they're maybe, they're in a more tranquil place. And I kind of feed to my own tranquility, right? Like, I love the beach and I love the mountains, and it makes me feel at peace. So even when I go there and I stay in one of them, I like it more than my own house when I stay there sometimes, because your own house, you've got crap everywhere, and you live your life in it, and then you go stay in one of your own midterm rentals, and it's like, oh, this is nice, like it's clean. It's just
so true.
Note, though,
no
I
clutter.
I think I think a lot of people are a little bit nervous to spend that money on the initial furnishings and adding things that they might see as optional, like wall art, or like you said, painting the cabinets. But that's really, really important.
Well, I think it's like, if you don't go all in, then you're sabotaging your own success potentially, right? So if
Yeah.
you only put, you look at your day-to-day job, if you have a day job, if you only give 50% effort, you're probably not even going to get 50% results at that point. You have to
Right.
give 100% effort to get the results that you want.
Yeah. And guys, I think that also means making sure you keep your listing up to date, making sure you're responding to leads, making sure that you're not just responding to leads with, yes, I have a property available, but giving them full details, a link to your property, details of why they should
Absolutely.
stay with you. It's putting your best foot forward all of the time. I mean, there was a period in short-term rentals and there was a period in midterm rentals where you just put your property up and you booked it. But now it's back to the roots of hospitality. It's back to the roots of relationships and communication and putting your best foot forward and making sure that your listing looks amazing and that you're acting as a professional, even if you only have 1 or 2 units, and that you're responding and that you are giving yourself the best chance to succeed and you're not sabotaging your chances. I like how you use that word.
Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Furnished Finder, the ultimate platform for hassle-free midterm rentals. Whether you're a seasoned landlord or just getting started, Furnished Finder has everything you need to find your next tenant. With Furnished Finder, you can say goodbye to booking fees, markups, and commissions, and hello to direct bookings. If you're ready to experience all the benefits renting your property for 30 days or more, head over to FurnishedFinder.com where you can list your property for one low annual price. We make it easy to get started.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, if I get a match lead or an unmatched lead, I reach out to them and I send a link to my property listing if it's Akron or Canton. I send the appropriate listing and say, hey, I'm either available at these dates. I don't totally match up with your dates. I'm available at these dates. I have some recommendations if you need to stay for like a week at like the Residence Inn or something like that. Here's a coupon code, and that has gotten me a few bookings, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm for 2 weeks of your 6-month stay, you can't stay here, but because I've got someone else in, but as soon as it's available, it'll be available for you. And, those people a lot of times will respond, hey, let me get back to you. And they obviously they're going in, they're looking at other things and seeing if they can find something nicer. But if you're the nicest thing, people typically are going to want to stay there, right? Especially it's one thing if it's for a month or 2 months, but if it's for a longer stay, they're going to be willing to wait a couple weeks and come up with some other plan to stay at a hotel or something to kind of get to the point where they can stay at your place.
Well said. So I am on fire with these community engagement opportunities today. If you have a listing out there and you're thinking, why isn't my property getting booked? Put it in the comments. Just tag your Furnished Finder property link and put feedback. And one of the 3 of us will get back to you and give you feedback on your property so that you can have those bookings rolling in as well. Just like Daryl's saying he's making some excellent points of, hey, be the nicest in the area. And there's a lot of benefits that come along with that. So in regards to your midterm rentals, I think it was your triplex that you converted first to midterm rentals. And did you do them all at the same time or one at a time? And what's the revenue difference there between long-term and midterm for you?
Right. It was my triplex I did first because that's the one I was having some problems with. And last year I put a lot of money into that place, right? Just it needed some love. It's a 100-year-old property. The interior I had done up really well. I started off with it has 2-bedroom. They're like 1,500 square foot 2 bedrooms, and they're beautiful. They're 100-year-old, like all the nice woodwork and everything, hardwood floors. But it was, so I had two bedrooms in there, and then I have like an attic unit, which I call a loft, right? And it's a big 900 square foot 1 bedroom, basically. It's got kind of funky ceilings, but ironically, I thought that would be the hardest thing to book. It was the hardest thing to get long-term tenants in. It's the easiest thing to book. Like, it is always booked at the midterm rental because it's less expensive, right? And it's at that like $1,300 a month mark where, like the single people that are in town that don't need a lot of space. It does have 3 flights of stairs going up, and I make sure I let everybody know that ahead of time because, I don't want someone that's like, 70 years old that has a hip problem booking it because they're not going to be able to get up there very easily. But you know, so I converted 2 at the same time. So I had 2 units that were essentially vacant. So I had my property manager rehab both of those. And you know, and it was interesting because they're used to doing regular turnovers for long-term tenants. So when I fly into town then to furnish it, I'm like, oh no. I'm like, we need to do a lot more, right? So I had guys in there like working the whole time I was trying to get it furnished, you know, like changing outlets so that they're like the paint, you know, everything's painted white, but the outlets are yellow, right? And I'm like, let's change all the outlets to white. Let's do this. Let's do that. So that's where I ended up spending a lot more money. Fortunately, I have a good day job and I can do that. Not everyone can just jump in and do that if you don't have the capital, right? But I was able to do it. So I did the first 2 and I just took a gamble. I'm like, look, I'm going to do 2 at a time. And I still had a long-term tenant in the first floor apartment. So it's the second and third floor that I did. And they were booked for a year solid. So as soon as that guy moved out of the first floor apartment, I did that one. And my longest gap has been like 2 weeks. And what I do at that point is I'll go like on Airbnb, or I use a channel manager. So I'll go on my channel manager and I'll say, all right, I'll accept less than 30-day stays for, you know, for this gap week.
That's nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah. And I got lucky just recently. Like the Pro Football Hall of Fame was just last week in Canton, Ohio. And I was able to get more than my normal month's rent for like 4 nights. You know, so it's like, so it was, and it worked out perfect because it was right between guests.
And that's a great way to use that hybrid strategy and fill in the gaps with the short-term rental without having to be a short-term rental host all of the time, because that's so demanding and that is a grind.
Absolutely. And I fortunately have found some pretty good cleaners. I've got like 3 sets of cleaners that I use there, and I use the Turno app. I don't know if you guys have heard of that one before.
Yep.
Love it. I haven't used it, but I want to so bad.
Yeah. And it ties into my channel manager too. So I do all my everything on Furnish Finder. I use my own direct booking site then to manually book them. And then that sends out the cleaning requests and everything else. So awesome. If for some reason someone contacts me and says, hey, I need to extend for a month, or I need to this or that, I just change it in the channel manager and it resets all of the cleaning schedule and everything else. And it's, you know, having a full-time job and having to be engaged as I am in my job, I need to do things one time and not have to do them multiple times, right? So
yep. I like what you've said there, because we get a lot of feedback because Furnish Finder is not completely integrated into a lot of these channel managers yet. And if you're not sure what a channel manager is, it's softwares or websites, platforms that pull in all of the platforms that you use to either list your property on or manage your property, places like Turno, Airbnb. And we always get the feedback like, oh, when are you going to integrate with this software or this software? And it's always a little bit trickier because on Furnish Finder, you do your own direct bookings. So you do that on your back end. You do that in the end. But I like what you're saying. You can still use these softwares. It's just when you make this direct booking, just go in there and add it in, and then it'll coordinate and it'll block off any other calendars you have on other sites. It can coordinate with your Turno. So I think that's a really wise way that you can still use these softwares to help make your management easy, even though they don't integrate with Furnish Finder yet.
How does that integration work for you, Daryl?
So, I mean, the nice thing is I do have it listed on, and I will tell you, I've only had bookings from Airbnb and Furnish Finder. That's it. And most of them come from Furnish Finder, right? But it is out there on Vrbo. I've had bookings, but they always cancel on Vrbo for some reason. And I've had, you know, like it's same thing, booking.com. And then like Google Vacations is kind of a new thing. But the direct booking site for the channel manager I use, it gives you the Google Vacations thing for free too. So haven't seen anything come that way, but if you just go to Google and you search for vacation rentals, then it will come up for that area or whatever. I don't think people have like caught on to that whole concept yet. But the really cool thing is I can send people to my direct booking site when they find me on Furnish Finder too. And I have a link for my direct booking site in my listings now. right? So, and if they go book, then it sends me a request. It doesn't automatically book. I have to vet them. I still have to do the background check and everything else. And once the background checks are done on KeyCheck, then I have them, I accept it, and then it does everything automated, right? It sends them the payment link. It sends them the once they make their initial payment, they get the lease, and then they sign the lease electronically, and it's all done at that point. So,
Hey landlords, are you ready to level up your rental game and simplify your midterm rental business? Well, get ready to meet your new best friend, KeyCheck. KeyCheck is your all-in-one solution for stress-free property management. With tenant-paid screenings, online rent payment processing, custom lease creation, and a suite of incredible landlord tools, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. No more chasing down checks or sifting through piles of applications. KeyCheck helps you organize and manage all things landlording in a simple and efficient way. Make landlord life a breeze with KeyCheck, the game changer for modern property owners. Visit keycheck.com to unlock the power of stress-free property management and take your rental business to new heights.
Before we dive into how KeyCheck's been a beneficial tool for your midterm rental business, I'm going to circle back to that revenue question. What's the difference in your triplex revenue from long-term to midterm? When we add multiple questions at once, so sometimes it's not your fault, it's our fault.
No problem. I'll blame you every time.
Perfect.
But yeah, I wasn't trying to be a politician there. I forgot the second part of the question. So my rents have been 2 to 2.5 times. Right. So
Awesome.
There's times where sometimes things just don't sync well. Right. And all of a sudden I've got like 4 units that are all coming empty at the same month, and it's like, all right. So then you start to get a little desperate. You're like, okay, I need to get one of these things booked, and I'll drop my price a little bit maybe for someone that comes in or negotiate. Sometimes, guests are good at negotiating down, especially if it's a long stay. If it's like a 6-month stay, I'll drop it from $1,875 to like $1,675 or something, right? And then it always, every time this has happened to me twice now, where I've had like a bunch of them at the same time, and one of them just happened this past month. And it's like, as soon as I get that one booking, the rest of them are booked like within a week.
Yeah.
And at like full price. And I'm like, I don't, it's like when it rains, it pours, but I've learned to not freak out too much, and thankfully part of your podcast has helped me with that, because I hear over and over again from other hosts that don't freak out. People like a lot of these people on contracts, whether they're medical professionals or the construction workers, they get their contracts like a week or 2 weeks in advance, and then they're looking.
The average book to stay window is 34 days. And that is actually longer than I have experienced with our rentals. I get a lot of travelers that are like, could I move in tomorrow? Could I move in next week? And it's true. Midterm rentals are this weird position where you have to be really patient, but then they stay for a while. So you would think that these travelers are booking farther out in advance, but they're not always. So I would encourage the same. If you have a vacancy, be patient, and also use it as a chance to say, okay, what can I improve on my property? What can I improve on my process? Can I get in there and refresh the bedding? Can I get in there and paint a wall? Like, what needs to be done? And use that as a time where you can reinvest in your property versus just letting it sit.
Yeah. And Daryl, correct me if I missed it, but I think the revenue side, you get about 2 to 2.5 times long-term rent. I think the long-term rent in your area is around $800 to $900 for Ohio right now, in that area of Ohio, and your midterm rentals are around $1,600, and they're all 2-bedroom, 1-baths with a basement.
So the triplex, they're 2-bedroom, 1-baths, and then there's the 1-bedroom. That 1-bedroom loft, I get about $1,375, and I really haven't had to flex down on that at all. I pretty much get that every time. The 2-bedroom, 1-baths, I will rent anywhere from $1,675 up to like I've had as high as $2,000 through like Airbnb a couple times. But
Nice.
But I mean, that's what they're paying. That's not what I'm getting. I'm getting more like the $1,875 or so when that happens. And then there is a common common basement in that triplex, and that common basement has 2 washer dryers. It also has storage. There's some like, I don't know, built-in like wooden storage stuff down there, and so I have a combination lock on there, and I give them the combo to the locks. If they have a bike or something they want to lock up, they can put it in the basement. It also has a garage that's common that has 3 spots in it. So but yeah, and then the ones that I'm converting now, those duplexes in Akron, those are 2-bedroom, 1-bath with their own basement. There's no garage, with their own basement that is the full size of the duplex below, right? So washer, dryers down there, hot water tank, all that kind of stuff. But what I do in those basements, because people look at all these beautiful photos, and I know I just think about myself. I put myself in their shoes, right? Like, look at all these nice photos, and then I see a photo of the basement with the washer dryer, and I'm like, I don't want to go down there. You know what I mean? It's like, so I had my base. It cost me $700 to have my basement fully painted, floor and everything, with my property manager, right? And it is a night and day difference, right? And then putting in decent lighting in the basement, right?
I was going to say, and put some lights in, because what's the first thing we all think about the basement we don't want to go into? It's that it's creepy and dark.
Exactly.
Add some lights. There's
Yeah.
actually, I've gotten them on Amazon, and Kelly, maybe we can link them. They're not the prettiest. They're very kind of industrial looking, but they screw into a regular light bulb, but they're LED, and it's like 3 things spawn out. And I have one of these in our garage, and it lights the entire garage. You would think that there's 10 light bulbs going on. They're like $15-20, and it's a game changer.
That's good. You need something like that.
Yeah, they're not cute, but for something like a garage or a basement where you're doing laundry and something, it would fit the bill.
Okay, so while we're rolling this direction, a couple things that you've said, Daryl, along the way is, one, we're talking about kind of those things to add to make your property better. But you also do that from San Diego, and your property manager and your contractors are all in, your 3 states, the midterm rentals mainly in Ohio. So what does it look like working with your contractor from across the country? Do you have him send you pictures? Does he have, access to the channel manager communication? Like, what does it look like with your property manager and when remodels are going on, et cetera?
Yeah. So my property owners, I've been using these guys since like 2017. And they've been amazing. They've helped me scale. And so what I do with them is I use their contractors. So when I first bought those duplexes in Akron, there was a guy that the last owners were using to do everything. And I used him to help me remodel 8 of the units. And on the last set of units, he had a bit of a substance abuse problem, apparently, that he had fallen back into. I was getting late night phone calls from this guy cussing me out about how much I was paying him and everything else. And I'm like, and I would always give him the contract and leave the amount and the time blank. I'm like, tell me when it'll be done. And I would put incentives in there for getting it done earlier on time, and negative, if it was done late. And he would fill in the date and the amount, right? And I'm like, you set your price, you set your deadline. Like, I didn't force these on you, but so I just got tired of that. So I just deal with my property manager now. They actually use that guy, but I don't have to deal with him. So
and they can just go like, he's local. So they can just be like, hey dude, you need to stay clean right now.
They're there. And he does a great job on refinishing floors, hardwood floors.
Good.
So they're amazing. So, but basically what I did was when I first did the midterm rentals, I didn't know what I was doing from a booking standpoint. So I hired another property manager that was experienced with that, just to handle that. And then and they were remote. And then I had my property manager in Ohio handling the building, basically. Right. So what I do is I give my phone number to the guests, and I also have the property manager's 24/7 number, right? And I say, hey, if it's an emergency, 24/7, water's bursting out of something, the power's out, whatever, call this number. Don't call me, right? Because I might be sleeping. If you're having trouble operating an appliance, call me, right? But yeah, so they manage the contractors, and a lot of it's about setting the right expectations on my end for them. I've learned even this one in Akron, I went in there and I thought more had been done when we had remodeled it, and I forgot it was the first one that I remodeled. So when I got there, I'm like, oh no, I need, like the vents were like in really bad shape, and so there was a couple $1,000s more went into it than I had anticipated. But I want everything, when I get it furnished, I want it to be perfect. I don't want to have to send construction people back in there, unless there's something that's broken that needs to be fixed. I don't want to have to do any remodel work or anything after the fact. So.
Okay, and when it comes to the midterm rental operations with your property manager, how much are you doing? It sounds like maybe you handle the guest communication and the channel manager, and then they handle any on-property maintenance, or what's the balance there?
Exactly. So I handle the guests. I handle all the bookings. I handle, most guest questions. For some reason, I have electronic locks and everything. For some reason, people can never figure out how to use them, even though I put a little instruction thing right above the door. But it seems like on like 50% of the check-ins, I get someone calling me, hey, I think my code's not working.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, well, I got those on the triplex. I got those quick set ones, and I quit buying those because people get confused that you got to push 2 numbers first. Just 2 random numbers light up. You got to push those, then you can put in your code. And they're like, I can't put in my code. There's only 2 numbers that light up, right? And I'm like, oh, you got to hit those 2 numbers first. And then I went to, on the new ones, I went to the Schlage ones because they don't do that, and they've got like the fingerprint proof screen instead. So, and they also integrate better with my channel manager, which is another reason why I went with those Schlage locks. So it's a little less work on my end because the channel manager automatically takes the last 4 digits of their phone number and makes that their code. So it's something that they won't forget, right? But yeah, back to your question though, Kelly, I handle all the guest stuff when it comes to that, and they just handle building maintenance, right? So, which is also nice with the guests because I can be like, oh, like if my property manager messed something up or they came out to fix something. I've had a couple times where they didn't knock on the door and they just opened the door. We've gotten to the bottom of that, but it's like, what I did was I put do not disturb, like in a hotel. I've got a little thing that slides. It says do not disturb or welcome to knock on it. And I tell the guests, hey, if, just like a hotel, if, you don't, because I also have like pest control that comes out to the triplex once a month, and they'll spray inside. But like if you don't want them to spray inside, just put the do not disturb on, and they won't come in. They'll just do the outside. So,
but I think this is all about creating these processes and solving these problems as you go forward. But what I'm hearing you say is like, you didn't just have an instance once where someone knocked and then it was disturbing to the guest, but then that happened and you made a more permanent solution, right? So it's like, okay, then we're going to have these signs that the guest can select if they want to be disturbed or not, right? And with the locks, okay, I'm having this issue. I'm not just going to constantly deal with it. I'm either going to make a process or I'm going to shift what we're doing. And I think that is just like key. It's like, stop dealing with the same problems over and over and over, but instead like take an extra second and figure out what's a more permanent way that I can handle this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then having those locks all set up that way, I get alerts when the batteries are getting low, and I just keep extra batteries in the drawer and tell the guest, hey, the battery's getting low on the front door. Can you, there's some in the drawer. Can you? And if for some reason, like I had one guest say, oh, there's only like 3 batteries left. It takes 4. I'm like, oh, I just ordered some for you on Amazon. They'll be there tomorrow. And it's and they don't. I haven't met a guest yet that minds doing that. Right? It's not. I think if it's a short-term rental and they're an Airbnb guest, it might be different. If they're there for 3 days, they're not going to want to change batteries in a lock. But if they're there for 2-3 months or longer, I don't think they don't really mind that. And the other thing with the sign too, Katie, is it puts responsibility back on the guest if someone knocks now. Well, you didn't put the do not disturb up, So yeah,
Good point.
And I always send out. Well, I get an alert from Orkin when the pest control is going, right? So. I know it's this Thursday, so on Wednesday, I send a message out to all the guests saying, hey, pest control's coming. Reminder, if you don't want them to come in, they'll knock regardless, but if you don't want them, they'll knock if it's set. They're not just going to walk in, but, set it to do not disturb if you don't want them to come in and spray or knock on your door.
Right. It's communication, right? It's communication.
So we talked about KeyCheck just briefly earlier. Let's dive into the Furnish Finder tools a bit more. KeyCheck being one of those that you use, Daryl. And reminder, KeyCheck is Furnish Finder's suite of midterm rental tools that once someone sends you a booking request or says, I'd like to move forward with a booking, because we're not an online booking platform, then we give you the tools to take that guest through a secure booking process on our sister site, KeyCheck. So we have all the tools there available for you with tenant screening and leases and rent payments. So Daryl, how has KeyCheck been such a valuable part of your midterm rental process?
It's been very important, right? It's first of all, I think guests that travel a lot and use Furnish Finder trust it. They know it, they trust it, right? So there's that, right? I like it now that more of it's integrated into Furnish Finder, like the tenant screening, for example. I use it for 100% of the tenant screen, unless it comes through Airbnb. Obviously, those don't get screened because there's extra protections or whatever. But anything through Furnish Finder, I use KeyCheck to do the background screening on each adult guest that's going to be there. I've had college kids stay there, and their parents always book it, and I do the background check on both of them, and the parents are always willing to do that. And then it's really awesome. Like you get 3 simple to read reports, right? I can real quick see the credit score, and if it's above a 700, I don't look any further, right? I don't need to. If it's below, then I kind of look down what's going on, and maybe have a conversation. Especially if it's below like a 640, I will definitely have a conversation to see what's going on there. But you can validate with what you see if they're telling you the truth or not. That's what's great. I've only had to have that conversation once. But then I was using it for all of my leases, as well as for all of the payments, until I adopted the channel manager, right? And because the channel manager lets me streamline the process and I don't have to click as many, I kind of went that way for guest payments and for the lease, because the lease is just integrated now into the process that they click through in their guest portal.
Which I think you still use ACH on ACH payments on KeyCheck, right?
Yeah. So if they're taking credit cards, I use the channel manager. But if and most of my guests just want to use their credit card, but like I have 2 construction workers sharing one of my 2 bedrooms right now, and the fact that it was 2 of them paying, number one, was a problem on my channel manager, and the fact they both wanted to use ACH and not get hit with the credit card fees was another issue. So for them, I set it up in KeyCheck. It's simple. I set up 2 different rental, 2 different payments, one for each email, and then set their rent schedule, and it's simple and easy to use. They were both older construction workers, so it was a little difficult to walk them through. So the first time I called support, and I said, hey, these guys are having trouble. Like I can't see what they see. I set myself up with a test payment so I could, and I'm like, I don't understand where and support helped them. So they helped them. They got them taken care of. That's the only time I've had an issue, and I think these were just a little technology challenged folks. But yeah.
Yeah, KeyCheck is amazing. I love it. I love it because it just feels like everything is in one place and integrated, and it makes your life a lot easier. And that customer service team is amazing. I mean, I know some of them personally as well, or I guess professionally, right? Because we're working with Furnish Finder and KeyCheck every day with our full-time jobs. And they're just the best people, and they just really care about making everybody's experience great and having these products work to help you reach your goals and make your processes really smooth. So let's pivot here a little bit and let's talk about sometimes that things didn't go perfectly, because things don't always go perfectly. And Daryl, how you used a waiver product to kind of navigate those situations. And then I can add in what Furnish Finder is introducing to kind of help landlords have that same type of protection.
Awesome. And I'm excited for that announcement that you're going to make too. Yeah. So I had gotten this idea from this kind of worry-free waiver idea from that property manager that I originally was using to do my bookings. And I used them for about a year, the first year. I realized though that I had to keep answering the same questions over and over again to them. So I might as well just deal with the guests. But what they did is they didn't take a security deposit, and instead they charged the guest I think it was a $30 fee or something. And instead, like per month, that would cover essentially an insurance policy for anything damaged, right? Now, I mean, we all have insurance on our properties, right? And I have insurance on my property that will cover my furniture too, but I don't want to enact that because someone destroyed a couch, because someone's dog destroyed a rug or chewed on a table or whatever. I don't want to make an insurance claim, because if anyone has ever made an insurance claim, that's like, it's like an insurance claim with your car, right? You get in a car crash, now your insurance goes up, right? So the worry-free waiver thing really came in handy for me with when I was with them. So I decided to find a product similar to what they were using for my properties going forward. I had a family move in to my first floor 2-bedroom right after I furnished it. These were the first guests, right? So everything was brand new. And they brought 3 pit bulls that they did not tell us about. And then once they were in there, said, they're service dogs. And I'm like, so there was nothing we could do. And I could see on my outside cameras, they were tearing up the yard. So I had several conversations with the guy about that. And I was just like, what's happening inside? Well, luckily, I was flying out at the end of that one, and I was going to be staying in the unit because I was getting siding done on the outside. I was getting the parking lot expanded, some other work done. This was November of last year. I flew out and I was like, that's it. I'm doing this all myself from now on with the guests. Right. And my cleaners, it was horrible inside. Like they caused almost $3,000 worth of damage to furniture. But the good thing is I had to pay out of pocket then to get everything redone, but I took really good pictures, had my cleaners take really good pictures. And the insurance covered it all. So, I think all but maybe like $500 of it, right? But when I look at the overall financial part of it, like these folks were paying 2.5 times the normal rent anyway, right? And so when I look at it compared to a long-term guest, I was still way ahead, even if the damages weren't covered for that 6-month stay. But yeah, so it was super easy to use, and it covered me. And so what I do now is I do take a deposit, but I take a smaller deposit, right? I take a $500 deposit. That's not too painful for people. I know, like, especially traveling medical professionals, they've got a deposit here. They're moving a contract. They haven't got their deposit here back. And now they've got to give you a deposit and get things done. And even when it comes to, medical professionals usually seem to have their finances fairly squared away. Construction workers, not as much, right? So they're usually living like they get their paycheck once a week. And, some of them ask me to pay once a week, right? Instead of like once a month. And because it's like they know their own habits or bad habits, whatever it is. But hey, they pay and I'm happy. So the worry-free waiver product, I absolutely am an advocate for. And I can't wait to hear your guys' announcement and check that out as well.
Yeah, you guys, worry-free waiver is live. It's here. We've been working so hard behind the scenes on it. And it's just for these types of situations that Daryl's talking about. I know everybody wants perfect rental experiences, and with midterm rentals, you get amazing experiences. You're going to have these professional tenants. You're going to have, most of the time it's going to be great, but it's nice to have that coverage if even something small happens. Let's say that you have a white couch and your tenant was drinking a glass of red wine and there goes your couch, right? Or let's say that they have a pet, because we always encourage, allowing pets. 40% of our travelers have pets. But then that dog or puppy destroys your coffee table or the bed or whatever it is. It's just nice to have coverage. Security deposits can cover you, but it can make for some really awkward conversations. it can also make it so you might create some tension that might lead to a negative review, or just, those conversations that nobody wants to have. So Worry-Free Waiver is a product that we have partnered with Wayvo on. And for a low cost, you can choose your level. There's levels from $59 a month to $79 a month. And you can get from $1,000 coverage to $3,500 of coverage. And with that, if you have damage, you just turn it in and go through the process, and then you can get made whole again. The other nice thing that it's covered is if you have someone who cancels their lease, as long as you have that active coverage throughout that term, you're going to get covered for that missing rent, which is really cool. And I know a concern with a lot of people with like medical professionals, and is their contract going to get canceled? Or what about this? What about that? As a landlord, I really like the options that I have to present it to a tenant. So in my mind, there's 3 ways, right? I can offer it as, hey, there's no security deposit. Rent is $50 higher, right? So I just build it into the cost of my rent. They don't even know there's a waiver. It's just my rent is $50 higher than my competitor, but I don't require a deposit. I can also offer it in addition to a security deposit, or I can have it and just build it in for the sake of my own protection for all of my properties and just pay for it as an expense, as like my security blanket. Typically, my plan is to tell potential tenants about it and say, hey, I don't require a deposit. I have a waiver that covers you for damages up to $1,000. If anything were to happen, you're covered. And that increases your rent by about $59. But I think it's a much better deal for you, and you don't have to wait to get your deposit back or anything like that. But you can work it into your business how you want to, because that's what we're here about at Furnish Finder, is like, how does this work for you? How does it work into your business?
Yeah, definitely. So the part I want Daryl to circle back onto with this conversation is it didn't scare Daryl away from still being pet friendly. He took the emotion out and said, okay, here's the facts. I'm making two times the market rent. I was able to get the damage back through, the Worry-Free Waiver type product. So I'm going to still offer pet-friendly homes, because almost 40% of Furnish Finder travelers want to travel with their pets. So you don't want to, remove that from your marketing. But he took that and put better pet policies in place. So, Daryl, what do your pet policies look like now that you learned from that experience?
So in my email template, when someone inquires, I ask automatically, like, are there any pets? Even if they're service animals, I need to know if they're pets, because if they're a dangerous breed, I have to inform my insurance company that I have a service animal there that's a dangerous breed, so that I'm covered, right? Because insurance companies can't deny you, but you have to let them know, right? And so I do that. First of all, I have a separate pet rules, right? They're not in my normal rules. It's a separate document, and it's hanging on the wall, like right as you walk inside, and they get it emailed out, right? And I have all the pet rules, and then I said service animals below. I'm like, service animals, these pet rules still apply for the service animals, right? Like there's nothing saying like legally that like I can't say like, hey, if you leave your dog in the house alone for long periods of time, it has to be kenneled, right? You can't just have it running free. And I have conversations with people about their pets. I'm not a big fan of allowing cats because of the allergens. I'm allergic to cats. So, I mean, it takes a while, even if you have a deep cleaning, for those allergens to disappear with cats. But I have allowed a couple cats because the people were like, oh, I've had this cat forever. It doesn't do it. And they explained the cat to me, and I'm like, okay, I'll allow the cat, right? And they've been longer stays, but I charge them an extra cleaning fee. I'm like, look, it's going to be a deep cleaning. So instead of the $160 fee, it's going to be like $300. Is that okay with you? And they've always been like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'm like, I have to make sure that the next person, if they have allergies, that it's taken care of. Right.
Yep. Just explaining the value there. Yep. That's important, right?
Yeah, and then circling back to the worry-free waiver, I love what Katie said on the 3 different options. Having used it myself and not having had a deposit, I learned that I want a small deposit, because if there's a small deposit and people feel like they have a stake in the game, I just feel like they're going to take better care. Even though I only have $500, I've given it back every time. I mean, even when there's been a couple things broken, I just, I don't care about a broken lamp or whatever. We'll just ship a new one. I don't even bother with the worry-free waiver product for that kind of stuff. If it's, under $100 or whatever, it's just easier to take care of it.
Yeah. I love that it gives you those options. Like, you can just be like, okay, how does this work for me? Or like, how does this work for this property or this scenario? You can change it and tweak it all the time and kind of test and see what is right.
So I have a question on the Wavo one, and I hopefully you guys know the answer on this. I think it would be good for the guys. So, like in my case, with my damage that happened, if I had another guest coming, if it hadn't been me coming in town, and by the way, I had to go stay in a hotel for 3 nights while we got the place cleaned up. I wasn't even going to stay there. If I'd had another guest coming like the next day, does the Wavo product cover those lost rents? Like, someone damages your place to where it's taken 3-4 days to get it cleaned up.
Yeah. That's a good question. And this has been one of the reasons that we've partnered with Wavo on it, is because this is the type of product where there's so many instances and so many like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? And what if this happens? And I actually don't know the answer to your question, but we have our KeyCheck team has been trained on the product. And like you said, like the customer service with them is amazing. And we also are like not stopping anyone from contacting Wavo. Like, that's why we're being very transparent about this partnership, is because they are the absolute experts. And we have like their customer service number. When you sign up, it's on the dashboard, so you can connect, you can ask questions before or during or after. Because it's one of those things that comes with a lot of like, what ifs? Well, what if, and it's not as like, I'm like, we need like a long Rolodex of all these situations. But I would encourage anyone, if you're interested in learning more about the product or you have kind of questions like that, go to your landlord dashboard, and then you're going to see a little thing that says landlord tools, and it's right under that section is landlord tools, and you will see it. And it's just going to say worry-free waiver, and it's got this cute little new icon by it because it's new and we're all so excited. But explore it and reach out if you have questions, because that is a fantastic, I think, use case question that is... We're going to have a lot of those.
Yep, for sure. And if you get on the Wavo website and you actually kind of read the story behind why they developed the product, it's not people that are second nature to the industry. It's people that have been in the industry from the short-term rental side and said, hey, there's not really great products out there for this, so we're going to create the great product. So it's a pretty cool story, and just kind of reinforces and gives you that peace of mind that it really is covering a wide span of what you need with a worry-free waiver without, when you think of products like that, you always think, okay, what's the red tape? And so I think in those conversations with KeyCheck, you can figure out that there's not necessarily a lot of red tape associated with it. Daryl, did you want to add anything to that? Otherwise, we're going to move on to our last 2 questions.
I like that they do cover like rents for cancellations. The one I use now only covers damages, right? So it doesn't cover any lost rents or anything like that. So I'm really interested in checking it out myself. So
Love it.
Awesome. Great. So you have a QR code in your images on Furnish Finder, and that QR code points people to a virtual tour, and you also have it in your description as well. So we would like to hear more about that product and how it's been a beneficial part of your midterm rental business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I found out about this product from my property manager in Ohio. They started using these Theta 360 cameras. And what they were doing is when they would do a turnover, right, they would go in and they put this thing on this monopod in each room. They take a picture, you do it through your iPhone or your iPad, and it takes a picture of each room, like this 360-degree photo, and then they tie it all together. It takes like 5 minutes to tie it together, and then they send it out with the turnover report, like of the damages, so that like if I'm like, oh, well, yeah, guys, like, let's also fix that or whatever, or, yeah, no, I can see that the blinds are destroyed or and so that's how I got the idea. And I'm like, wow, and so I went to order one on Amazon, and then I went to their website and realized, oh, they give these cameras away for free because you have to have a software subscription. So I canceled my Amazon order of this like $250 camera. And it's like, I think it's around $400 a year. So if you have just one, it might not make sense, but with having 4 and I'm growing, it makes a lot of sense, because I think maybe I'd say 25 to 30% of the people that book with me want to see it. And they'll say, and even though I have the QR code and I have the link in there, they'll be like, hey, can we get in and look at it? I'm like, well, no, I'm sorry, you can't.
No.
Like, I'm booked all the time. I can't let you in. I mean, if no one was there, and even if no one's there, I'm kind of like, do I want to let someone I haven't signed a contract with just, if I'm there to let them in, it's a different thing. Or I'm not going to pay my property manager $100 to go out there and walk someone through either, right? So I'm like, here's the virtual tour. And that's worked every time. They're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, it looks exactly like it does in the virtual tour. Like maybe we've maybe replaced a broken lamp or two, but otherwise it's exactly like the virtual tour. And that's kind of set their minds at ease every time. And I think we all know there's scams out there. You guys put warnings on your website about them. And I think the more evidence of your rental, things like virtual tours, things like, your listing, using KeyCheck. I think the more of that there is to make people feel comfortable, the more they're like, all right, yeah, this is legit. This person's not, when they see my direct booking site too, all those different things like help, like give legitimacy that this is a real business. I'm not just, I'm not sending my money off to Nigeria or somewhere, where there's.
Yeah, it's anything. And then it gives you that leg up with the competition, right? And it just do it really, really well. So I love that. I think that's like your theme is whatever you do, you're going to do it really, really well. And I just love how this seems to be resonating with all of your processes and all of your steps here. So kudos for that.
So let's wrap up with the last question of, you've really emphasize in this episode the value of multifamilies in the midterm rental space. So how did you find the right deals for your multifamilies? What tips do you have for others?
Yeah, so you'd think with all the Bigger Pockets episodes I listened to that I was out there like finding off-market deals or something, but I have not bought one off-market deal, right? So they've all been on market. I have a buddy that I went to high school with in Ohio. He's my real estate agent. My property manager would love me to use his realty company for it, but I'm pretty loyal to my buddy Matt. And he finds me my properties, right? He sets me up on his MLS search. I have access to the MLS there via his portal, right? And I see a property, I ping him. I'm like, hey, Matt, let's check this one out. He'll drive out, look at it for me, take pictures, FaceTime me. And that's how I found, all of these essentially. I think the first one I didn't use him. I didn't know he was a realtor. And when he saw I bought a duplex there, he's like, dude, like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I didn't know that's what you did. So going forward, I used him on everything out there. In Kansas City, I just reached out and found an investor-friendly realtor. I think I used Bigger Pockets. And then I built that place in Florida through like one of these like rent like I think it was rent to retirement, but like through one of these investor friendly like build sites. But that was a pandemic challenge, and it became more of a challenge building a new house in Cape Coral during the pandemic than it probably would have been to find something on market. But yeah.
Well, I think what's cool about that Florida one is how you said it's important to stay tuned into the market, and you were putting in offers that were getting outbid over and over, which is why you switched to the building route versus the purchasing route, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it just took 3 times longer than what was anticipated, right? And the market shifted during that time, and interest rates went up and everything else. So it's not making what I wanted it to. And honestly, and I've looked at that market to do midterm, but like for that brand new house, it doesn't make sense. Like I only get a few $100s more than I get for long-term rent there. And I think it's just because like, if I know, like, that area, it's, if you're not like on it's a lot of retirees and families and stuff. And there's just not a lot of, I don't feel like there's a lot of, people will go down there for Airbnb and stuff, but they want a pool and they want a lot of other stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I'm not doing all that. So that property doesn't quite fit what I need for a midterm. So I'll keep it long-term for now. But there's always a chance of maybe selling it, reinvesting that money elsewhere into more midterm. So.
Awesome. Okay. Well, if anyone would like to connect with you, you have your website. We've got your Furnish Finder listing in the show notes. Any other ways that you want them to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm my first name, last name on Instagram. Same thing on LinkedIn. So yeah. I think it's the same on Facebook as well. But I'm
perfect.
Daryl Lyson.
Great.
Daryl Lyson everywhere.
Sweet. So homework for you guys today. We've talked a lot about your Furnish Finder dashboard tools. So get in your dashboard, check your listings, check the things that are available that you might not be using right now, like the new Worry-Free Waiver product, KeyCheck we've had for a long time, but maybe you're not using it right now. So get in there and see how they might be excellent additions to your midterm rental business. And stay tuned to the Landlord Diaries. We always tell you about those tools to use and how you can just be the best midterm rental host you can be with all the new changes in the industry and anything coming up. So tune in every week to the Landlord Diaries and share our podcast with a friend so that y'all can have fun talking about it. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.